Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Dr. Ravenstein, and today I will be showcasing my Lightning God build. I do want to clarify, I put this build together myself with a little bit of help from the fextralife.com wiki, and then I later found out that a lot of other people were using a build very similar, so it's not uncommon to see it. It's not original, but it is something that I thought up myself originally, you know? So, let's get into it. So from what I've been able to do with this build, you are able to do enough damage to slay bosses that have high enough defense for lightning, such as Placidusax, or deal more than enough damage to handle with bosses that are even remotely weak to lightning, like Starscourge Radahn. First, we're going to start off with the stats. I'm starting off with level 250. You can copy the stats here however you want or change it however you want, but if you want to copy it exactly, I highly recommend that you start off with the stats that are higher level. Prioritize the higher ones first. This build does not require anything in intelligence or arcane. With stats like these, you're going to be able to use just about any weapon that is not high strength requirement. Most armor sets, most shields, just about every incantation that is not intelligence or arcane based, and you'll have enough health to hopefully get you through most bosses. Next, we're going to talk about the gear. Starting out with the Flask of Wondrous Physic, I'm using the Lightning Shrouding Crack tier, as it adds a 15% damage buff to all lightning based damages, including incantations and weapon attacks, for 3 minutes. Then we have the Opaline Hard tier, which boosts all damage negation types, physical and magical, by 15% for 3 minutes. Moving on to talismans, we have the Phlox Canvas Talisman, which raises potency of incantations by 8%. Then we have Godfrey Icon for a charged spell and skills for 15%. Then we have the Lightning Scorpion Charm, which raises your lightning attack damage and incantation damage by 12%, but lowers your damage negation by 10%. And then we have the Shard of Alexander, which greatly boosts the attack power skills by 15%. Moving on to our seals, we have the Gravelstone Seal. Gravelstone's seal boosts Dragon Cult incantations, which is any lightning based spell, by 15%. Now, if you have two Gravelstone seals, one in each hand, it boosts Dragon Cult incantations by 32%. So it is very worth your while to have two of these and have one in your offhand while casting with the one in your dominant hand. Next, we're moving on to the weapons. I use the Death Knight's twin axes because they have a great deal of lightning damage already on them, and they stack high with faith, strength, and a decent amount with dex. And the reason why I don't have my strength higher than my dex for this weapon is because dex increases your casting speed. I do also like to use dual wield lightning Zweihanders because one thing I've always thought was a great mechanic in Dark Souls 2 was the power stancing, and I'm incredibly happy they brought it back for Elden Ring. So dual wielding two lightning Zweihanders, one with lightning slash and then the other with lightning ram, just because I thought it'd be funny. They do more damage combined than the Death Knight's twin axes. But as I stated before, I do prefer to use the Death Knight's twin axes because they have a pretty fun Ash of War. Now, the shield is up to you. I prefer to use the Dragon Claw shield because not only does it fit the aesthetic of the build, but it also has pretty decent damage if you level it up high enough. And it has the best lightning damage negation in the game, except for the Fingerprint Stone shield, which is far too heavy and way out of our stat range. Starting with talismans, going to the Southern Aeonia Swamp Site of Grace to Gowry's Shack. After having completed Millicent's quest and then killing Gowry, he will drop the Phlox Canvas Talisman. Another way around this, doing her whole quest, is getting her to spawn in here, kill her, then reload the area to have him find her dead. Next will be the Lightning Scorpion Charm at the Windham Catacombs, the closest grace site being the Erdtree Grazing Hill. After the first elevator, you're going to follow the path on screen. There are several enemies in the area that you're going to want to avoid, at the end being a Lyondale Knight. I do end up missing a trap here and then getting hit by one of those weird gremlin guys. But behind this locked door is the Lightning Scorpion Charm. Next will be the Godfrey icon at the Golden Lineage Everjail. Same site of grace as last time. This is a long, winding path to get there, but other than that, you'd have to jump around some cliffs that are just not terribly fun to jump around. But once you get to the Everjail, it is going to cost 2 Stone Sword keys to get in. And then you'll fight a Godric style boss, except for his second phase. He's decently easy, depending on how far you got to build. Next will be the Shard of Alexander at the Dragon Temple Grace. I do warn you now, spoilers ahead, so if you don't want them, skip ahead, but for those who are okay with it, you will have to do most of Alexander's quest line all the way up to the end. This is the end of his story. Now, it is a bit of a long-winded path from the closest site of grace, and that door will cost you 2 Stone Sword keys. You're going to end up exhausting all of his dialogue, going through his duel. It's a pretty easy fight. Then you have to go through the rest of his dialogue, and after you get through the 10 years of dialogue, he will end up blowing up and giving you the Shard of Alexander. Now we'll be working on spells. The first one will be at the Artist's Shack site of grace. It will be a spell book dropped by this Lyondale Knight, and it will give us Lightning Sphere and Honed Bolt. You can give the spell book to either Corin or Muriel. Next will be the Fogrift Catacombs from the Castlefront site of grace. You're gonna follow this path here after the first elevator, I believe. Watch out for the ceiling trap here. I recommend clearing out this area beforehand. There's actually a couple secret items above that ceiling trap. Drop down this hole and take the first left, and then the second left. And in this room, there will be the 2 crystal slinging sorcerers that actually almost killed me right here. Once you clear them, on the ground will be the spell Electrocharge. And then we have the Fog Rift Catacombs seen here. You're going to take this long path after the second elevator. You're going to want to be careful. There is a Deathblight Basilisk sitting above the doorway that you enter from. Once you avoid the two ceiling traps, you're going to go to the end of this hallway. And on the ground right there will be Knight's Lightning Charge. Once again, from the Erdtree Gazing Hill, you're going to take this path down, and you're going to encounter the Ancient Dragon Lanciax. Now, you only have to do about 10 to 20% of his health, and then he'll end up teleporting away to a different location. That second location is the Rampart Side Path. You're going to go to this spot on the map here to find the full version of Ancient Dragon Lanciax. And after you successfully kill Lanciax, because I almost died here a couple times, not as easy as he looks. There's not as difficulty there. He will give you Lanciax's blade. Next, you're going to go to the Crumbling Beastgrave Depths and follow this path here. After clearing the area, you will find the Ancient Dragon's Prayer Book, which will give you Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike and Ancient Dragon's Lightning Spear. Next, being the Sacred Tears, the Lightning Shrouding Crack tier will be available at this minor Erdtree, closest site of grace being the Ruined Labyrinth. Then we have the Opaline Hard tier, available at this minor Erdtree, closest site of grace being Fort Ferrith. The Dragon Claw Shield can be found at the Capital Rampart site of grace, dropped by the Malformed Tree Sentinel. Next is the Darklight Catacombs, accessible from this long, winding path on the side of the mountain here, which is quite annoying to get to. Inside the catacombs and after the second elevator, you're going to want to take this path down here, drop down, kill the crystal sorcerer and the green golem on the ceiling, and you will find the Death Knight armor set. Alright, now I'm going to start off with showcasing how I would play the build, starting off with the Death Knight's twin axes, which I want to clarify I accidentally lost the footage for. You get it from the Fog Rift Catacombs boss the end. Now, I like to use the Ash Ward because that spin move is just pretty fun to use, and it does take pretty intense. I do like to use it specifically for when you're just running around the world killing small mobs, not particularly for bosses unless it's a boss where you don't generally have time to cast a spell. The Dragon Claw shield is pretty much for any time where you really need a shield as well as a weapon, or you need a shield and to be casting. It's got pretty good defenses, around 50 in everything but lightning, which is 76. And if you level it up, that shield bash is actually pretty powerful. Then moving on to the catalysts, we are dual wielding the Gravelstone seals because, as I said before, one boosts lightning damage by 15%, but two of them boost lightning damage by 32%. So, when you have the availability to dual wield them, do it, because it is an insane amount of damage. It is a very visible difference, and it's just more worth it than I could possibly explain. On to the spells. We've got our charged spells first, and then our non-charged spells. So for those who don't have the DLC, Lightning Spear is recommended for those direct shot, long-range enemies that you need, where you have one like standing up on a cliff somewhere. You can't exactly get to it. If you do have the DLC, Knight's Lightning Spear. Not charged. It's just pretty basic. It shoots 4. Charge. It shoots a total of 6 extra. And it does a 20% damage buff when charged. So do all charged spells. Skipping this for now, I'll talk about that last. Electro Charge has a pretty basic AoE when you first cast it, and then afterwards it'll do a small amount of damage to anything nearby as you walk past them. When you charge it, its AoE is a lot stronger, and that passive buff that deals damage over time to anything nearby does a little bit more damage. Lanciax's glaive does not charge, but when you get a big horde of enemies that you want to knock back, you'll end up jumping up and putting out a wave of red lightning that will stun or knock back most small mobs. Then you have Ancient Dragon's Lightning Spear, which will do a similar thing, except it will only go in 4 directions. Now you can replace this with Fortisax's Lightning Spear, which will do it twice, but this character did not get to Fortisax's playthrough. Then you have Honed Bolt. Honed Bolt can target and downward strike enemies, and it cannot be charged. It does a pretty decent amount of damage though. Then we have the big daddy of the build, Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike. Not charged, it doesn't do very much on its own, but when you charge it, and it does take a while to cast, you can see just how thick the lightning strikes are. Each strike with this build does 3,200 damage. 3.2 thousand damage per strike. I highly recommend using this for boss fights whenever you can get it off. It's especially useful for big creatures like dragons or fire giant. But if you can get it off in a boss fight, it will serve you well, and it does so much damage. Then with the Flask of Wondrous Physic as a basic buff, it lasts 3 minutes, 15% damage buff to lightning, and 15% damage negation to your player. I like to use that as I go into boss fights or more boss type small mobs like mini bosses like Malformed Tree Sentinel or Draconic Tree Sentinels, whatever you want to call it. I like to use the Mimic tier mainly as another body, as a distraction. I'll usually go into a boss fight looking like this, holding America's Blessing out, because it is a 100% heal, and he will use it. Your Mimic tier will use the Blessing America. So I'll walk into the boss fight looking like this, I'll pop my Mimic tier, and then I'll switch over to my spells, and I'll let him take the aggro of the boss while I get in on the side and start casting my spells. That is about all I can tell you for this build. It is pretty damn good. I've been able to do solo every boss in the game for 5 playthroughs except for Prime Consort Radon. But the only reason why I haven't been able to do that with this build is his attacks are just crazy insane. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I post a lot of videos on TikTok, YouTube. I'll be streaming to Twitch every once in a while. And I've got a bunch of links that'll be down in the description. Go ahead and check them out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.